A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. According to them, the purpose of this is to protect American citizens by eliminating threats that are allegedly imminent from the regime of Iran. In a message directly addressed to the citizens of Iran, the American president said that once the operation is over, it will be up to them to take action regarding their government. According to him, this might be the only opportunity that will come in many generations. He also emphasized that America is ready to support them with tremendous power and destructive force. This was the statement of American President Donald J. Trump in an 8-minute video he released on social media early Saturday morning, where he announced to the whole world that the United States had launched the long-awaited attack against Iran. In the said video, Trump explained the reason for the operation, which was named Operation Epic Fury by the United States Department of War. According to him, the Iranian regime has long been a threat not only to Americans and their allies, but also to its own citizens in Iran. He mentioned the thousands who were killed during the protests in January as proof that the ANI is a brutal government. He added that the danger has grown even more because Iran is allegedly trying to rebuild its nuclear program, while also developing long-range missiles that can reach Europe and even America. In the end, he once again called on the Iranian people to overthrow their government, a call he had already made during the height of the protests. Soon after, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, also released a video on social media. He repeated the points mentioned by Trump about the threat from Iran and also called on Iranian citizens to overthrow their government. The statements from the two leaders came out a few hours after the explosions were first heard in Tehran. According to the Iranian news agency Fars, missiles hit near a base of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC. The Associated Press also reported that attacks occurred near the office of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, an indication that the United States and Israel may have aimed to immediately target Iran's strongest leadership in the first wave of the operation. So now it seems like 2026 doesn't want to give us a break. Let's break down what the confirmed details are about the attacks, what is still unclear, and what their possible effects could be on the wider region. But before we start, if you're new to our channel, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always be updated with videos like this. That's it. According to various reports, the attack started at around 8 in the morning local time in Tehran. According to an Israeli security source who spoke with Channel 12 News in Israel, the timing of the attack was intentional to surprise the Iranians because they did not expect an offensive in the middle of the day. According to the same source, there are 3 important details to remember. First, the United States and Israel planned this operation together for several months. Second, Israel was fully decided to deploy all their forces, and Washington agreed. And third, the first phase of the joint attack was set to last for 4 days. There were American officials who spoke with the New York Times who also confirmed that both the United States and Israel were ready to go all out. They said the bombardment would be broader and more intense than Operation Midnight Hammer. The operation was carried out during the 12-day war where United States bombers struck important nuclear sites in Iran. Right now, it's really hard to get the full picture of which locations inside Iran were hit. According to the global internet watchdog NetBlocks, the government implemented an almost total internet shutdown, a move often done to control the flow of information during a crisis. But based on the details coming out, it seems that Israel and America are following through on what they said. Several sources who spoke to the Wall Street Journal said that the first wave of attacks mainly targeted Iran's military assets to immediately weaken its ability to retaliate. Symbols and facilities related to intelligence operations were also among the targets. In other words, this was not just a warning. It was a calculated and systematic first step with a clear objective: to strike Iran's capabilities, symbols, and structures of power before it could prepare a response. Some of the most important targets hit were Pastor Street, a highly secured area in Tehran where the office of the Iranian president is located, as well as the headquarters of the Revolutionary Guard and Intelligence Services, the Supreme National Security Council, and other major military institutions. The Iranian news agency also reported explosions in other cities, including Isfahan, near a nuclear complex that was also hit by the United States and Israel last year during what was called the 12-Day War. There are also reports from Kermasyan in the northwestern part of Iran, which is home to a base of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and from Shiraz, a place that Israel has long accused of having a large underground missile production facility. According to Al Jazeera, a new series of explosions was heard in Tehran at around 1 o'clock in the afternoon local time. This shows that it was not just a quick strike, but an operation that could last, with successive phases. However, the outlet still cannot verify the exact location of all the targets due to the implemented internet blackout. Because of this, it's also difficult to get a clear count of those killed or injured, especially since it's clear that Iran's top leadership was among the targets. According to Iran's state-affiliated media outlets such as Tasnim and Mash News, President Masoud Pezeshkian is reportedly safe. Meanwhile, Reuters reports that Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was moved to a secure location before the attacks began. But there are reports emerging that confirm the Supreme Leader is no longer present. In addition, according to an Iranian source close to the establishment who spoke with Reuters, several high-ranking commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and some political officials were killed in the strikes. If these reports are true, it's clear that the first wave of the operation was not just a simple show of force. This is a direct attack on the very center of Iran's power. Israel Channel 12 also reported what seems to be confirmation of this information based on unnamed security sources. According to them, the attacks achieved a very high level of success in targeting top commanders, and Israel is reportedly satisfied with the initial results of the operation. At the time of writing, some Israeli sources say that among those killed were leaders of Iran's Revolutionary Guard, as well as the country's defense and intelligence ministers, and even its chief nuclear negotiator. It's important to note that although Iran's state media confirmed the safety of the country's president, the chief justice, and some other high-ranking officials, they have not yet given a clear statement about the condition of the supreme leader. If we look back at previous events, we can see that Israel has long been hinting at the possibility of this kind of attack. One of the indications of this is their successive operations against one of Iran's main proxies, Hezbollah. On the 20th of this month, the Israel Defense Forces carried out an airstrike in Lebanon that killed several officials they accused of planning operations against Israel. And just hours before the attacks on Iran, the Israel Defense Forces also launched another airstrike last Friday. Overall, it appears that the offensive against Iran was not just a sudden move, but part of a broader and longer-term strategy that has been prepared for a long time. According to Ron Ben, an analyst from an Israeli outlet, those earlier airstrikes had a particular purpose: to blind Hezbollah's detection system, systems that could give Iran an early warning about the flight of the Israeli Air Force for a preemptive strike. Later, Afghan news outlet and Hollow News reported that Israel carried out additional attacks in Lebanon against Hezbollah targets. At that time, the goal was to prevent these groups from interfering and joining the expanding war. And this is where we come to Iran's response. Just a few hours after the initial wave of attacks by America and Israel, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced that they had launched the first large-scale wave of retaliatory missile and drone strikes toward Israel. Sirens blared in different parts of Israel as the military was busy intercepting incoming projectiles. According to initial assessments, Iran launched no less than 35 ballistic missiles throughout the day. Some missiles were intercepted by the air defense system. Others fell in vacant areas, and one person was reported to have been slightly injured by falling debris. But Iran did not only target Israel. The IRGC also confirmed that they carried out attacks on American military installations throughout the Gulf region. This includes the Al Asad Air Base in Kuwait, Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates, Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, and even the headquarters of the United States Navy Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. There are reports of explosions in Abu Dhabi, Kuwait City, Doha, and even Riyadh. This is a clear signal that Iran's response is not limited to just one front, but has expanded throughout the entire region. At this point, it's no longer a simple exchange of strikes. This is quickly turning into a widespread regional conflict, directly involving many countries in the Middle East. According to the defense ministries of Qatar, they successfully intercepted Iran's missiles, while the United Arab Emirates reported that a civilian was killed in Abu Dhabi after several incoming missiles were intercepted. The United Arab Emirates described the attack as a blatant and serious violation of their national sovereignty and insisted that they reserve the right to retaliate with full force. Both Bahrain and Qatar condemned the attacks, and Bahrain even called Iran's actions an attack. There are videos circulating from Gulf countries showing what appears to be successful strikes on some targets in Bahrain and Abu Dhabi. For now, the important point here is that those strikes did not hit any oil facilities or other energy infrastructure, and this means that Iran may have deliberately avoided targeting energy facilities, or the missiles were intercepted before they could reach those targets. According to statements from some Gulf states, some of them might join the United States' offensive against Iran, and if that happens, the scope of the war will become even wider. And the question now is, what options does Iran have left to escalate? As we mentioned earlier, Israel is actively trying to prevent Hezbollah from intervening, and they are not expecting the immediate disappearance of Hamas, especially after their infrastructure was severely crippled following the attacks on October 7th. The Houthis in Yemen are a different case. After the strikes, the Houthis announced the resumption of missile and drone attacks against the sea lanes in Israel. Two unnamed officials confirmed to the Associated Press that they expect the first wave of attacks to begin as early as Saturday night, Israel time. It should be remembered that the Houthis temporarily stopped attacks on Red Sea shipping routes and against Israel as part of an agreement with the Trump administration. And now it seems they are putting pressure again on one of the most important trade routes in the world. Meanwhile, in Iraq, it is believed that militias linked to Iran are behind the initial wave of rocket attacks. And there is a strong possibility that more will follow. By the time you watch this, it might be clear which proxy groups have continued to retaliate and how extensive their actions are. But for now, around 2 in the afternoon Central European time, this is the most complete picture we can form. And if we look away from the actual battlefield, the reaction of the international community is also noticeable. The United Kingdom government announced that they will not take part in the attacks, and they do not want to see this escalate into a wider regional conflict. They also added that recently they have strengthened their defensive capabilities in the Middle East as a precaution. Germany, on the other hand, said that they were given prior notice before the attacks and that they are continuously monitoring the situation. Meanwhile, the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, released a statement saying that it is important to avoid any actions that could further escalate tensions. These reactions are to be expected right now. However, the United Kingdom's strong insistence that they have nothing to do with it indicates that London wants to maintain its distance from Washington's more aggressive actions against Iran. It's possible that they don't want to put their interests in the Gulf at risk or get involved in a war that could expand beyond the original plan. What is even more notable, however, is the reaction of Iran's two closest allies, Russia and China. Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council, wrote on Telegram that the United States is showing its true colors and that negotiations have never been sincere. Aside from those statements, Russia has not yet provided any concrete action or support to Iran at this time. China, on the other hand, is even more silent. They have not released any official statement condemning the attacks at the time of this writing. And that silence is significant. It was just about a week ago when Russia, China, and Iran conducted joint naval drills in the Strait of Hormuz under the Maritime Security Belt 2026 framework. The purpose of that exercise was to demonstrate trilateral military cooperation and to send a message to Washington that Iran is not alone. However, when American and Israeli jets began dropping bombs on Iran, the show of unity seemed to be just for show. It was just a performance on stage with no concrete support when the real test came. China's silence becomes even more significant because, according to reports, Beijing sent offensive weapons and additional defensive arms to Iran, something that was allegedly confirmed by 3 officials familiar with the matter. Furthermore, Iran is reportedly close to formalizing an agreement to purchase Chinese-made CM-302 supersonic anti-ship cruise missiles, even before the attacks began. The CM-302 has an estimated range of about 180 miles and can fly at lower altitudes to evade ship defense systems. It is specifically designed to target aircraft carriers, which means it sends a clear message about who its possible targets might be. Reuters said the agreement is nearly finalized, but no delivery date has been set. And aside from this, Iran is also reportedly in talks with China to purchase surface-to-air missiles, man-portable air defense systems, or man-portable air defense systems anti-ballistic weapons, and even anti-satellite weapons. With all the discussions about weapons and the joint naval exercises, It's almost ironic that up to now, China has not made any official statement about the attacks against Iran. It's clear that Beijing does not want a pro-Western Raymond Sederin, but at the same time, it also doesn't want to jeopardize its relationship with Washington and the Gulf countries by openly supporting Iran while there is active conflict. At this point, that's what we know. A quick update in a very uncertain and fragile moment. Now, let's move on to what's more interesting, the things we don't know yet. The biggest question in all of this is whether we're witnessing the start of a full-scale regional war or just another phase of strike and counterstrike that will eventually die down. Right now, no one can answer for sure. For weeks, leaders in the region have been calling to avoid a full-scale war because it's clear that the result could be disastrous. However, with Iran's attack on the Gulf countries, it has shown that they are ready to consider these as legitimate targets. And the moment they did that, they gave those countries enough reason to support possible preemptive measures against future strikes, especially if oil and gas infrastructure are targeted. This is where the Strait of Hormuz issue arises. It is estimated that about 20 million barrels of oil pass through this strait every day, which is equivalent to almost 27% of the global maritime oil trade and roughly 1/5 of the world's total daily oil consumption. If Iran follows through with its threat to close or disrupt the flow through the strait, oil prices could suddenly skyrocket. And if that happens, the impact won't just be regional, it will be global. Higher energy costs could possibly halt or slow down manufacturing in countries like China, India, South Korea, and Japan, which heavily rely on shipments passing through the strait. Those extra costs will flow through the supply chain and ultimately affect consumers worldwide. From gasoline to groceries, everything could become more expensive. Within America, this could also become a political nightmare for President Trump. Many Americans are already furious about the cost of living crisis. If the prices of goods and gasoline continue to rise, it could make him look like he put himself in a difficult position. Another thing we don't know is the status of the negotiations. Although Iran seems to be very far from diplomatic talks after the attacks, there is still a possibility, even if small, that the negotiations can be salvaged. In the midst of gunfire and missile exchanges, sometimes the most unexpected move is returning to the negotiating table. But for now, all of that remains in the realm of speculation. We say this because last Friday, before the attacks, the foreign minister of Iran appeared on American television and said that a peace deal was within reach. But recent events have made that possibility even more difficult. It's also important to note that the United States has a recent history of using peace negotiations as a cover for military operations, as happened in Operation Midnight Hammer in 2025. That's why it's really unavoidable to ask, is this part of a bigger tactic? If Israel and the United States are unable to continue weakening Iran, or if the attacks are not enough to turn the public against Raymond, then a deal might still be the only way to end this conflict. Raymond's survival is also an issue. For several weeks now, the Iranian government has been facing intense internal pressure. The protests in January were considered the largest uprising since the 1979 revolution. It seems the regime considers this an existential threat, which is why up to 10,000 citizens were killed in the attempt to regain control. The President of America believes that Raymond is weak, so both he and Netanyahu are calling on the Iranians to overthrow their government. However, experts are really divided on whether that's realistic. According to Nathan Rafati, an associated fellow at Johns Hopkins, the Islamic Republic has re-established control after the protests, and there is no indication of an imminent collapse. Meanwhile, analysts from the Rand Corporation warn that, although Raymond is still able to suppress dissent using force, the threat posed by those protests should not be underestimated because it exposed deep weaknesses that could make it difficult to stay in power in the long term. In other words, Raymond's ability to overcome this crisis depends on many uncertain factors. Will high-ranking IRGC officials or political elites defect or stay loyal? Will the security forces remain united or break under intense pressure? And above all, will Iranian citizens rise up again now that Raymond's grip has weakened because of America's military strength? This is where the President of America is betting. But history shows that often, when there is external military intervention, people tend to rally behind their governments, even if they are angry at them, instead of rising up against them. And if Raymond does fall, then what's next? Nothing yet. Even if Trump has a clear plan, Israel also doesn't have any concrete statements about the next steps. The fate of Libya after Gaddafi and Iraq after Saddam Hussein should serve as a warning. Both of those countries sank into chaos, and their citizens did not benefit from regional stability. Iran is bigger, more complicated, and more capable compared to those two countries. If a power vacuum occurs in Iran, sectarian violence may erupt. There could be a surge of refugees. The oil market could be affected, and extremist groups could gain ground, possibly even more dangerous than Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. This does not mean that the current regime should remain in power. And let me repeat, they have killed tens of thousands of their own citizens. But history shows that regime change without a clear plan for what comes next often leads to even greater tragedy. For now, we will continue to monitor the events and report confirmed information, even if it means giving up our Saturdays in the coming weeks. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please subscribe and we'll see each other again in our next video.